Well, let's move over to Lexington, Kentucky, where the talk is usually of basketball, but not of late. The basketball is kind of underachieved. And meanwhile, Mark Stoops continues to build a solid Kentucky football program. Now, Mark Stoops doesn't get a lot of the talk about being one of the top coaches, but it is nothing short of, I don't know how anyone cannot be impressed with the job that he has done at
Agree.
Kentucky. And you've got people in the Commonwealth fired up about football. You have a stadium that is near full for home games. You don't have to go back that far in history to find a stadium that looked very different
Oh,
in terms of
absolutely.
attendance. And
Eh, yeah, absolutely. And, not only was it empty from Kentucky people, but it wasn't a place that many people traveled for road games. I mean, it was
mhm.
just an empty stadium.
And one of the reasons Stoops doesn't get the due, I think, get the credit he's deserved is he's in his 11th year. His record's 66-59. People look at that and be like, well, that's not that great of a record. I mean, you get fired at most SEC schools with that
Right.
record, but you got to remember where he's at and where he's brought that program from. He's taken them to 7 straight bowl games.
That's incredible.
Now, last year's record, not that great, 7-6, 3-5. They had some injuries.
Hmm.
It didn't pan out the way they thought. They have a returning offensive coordinator in Liam Cohen. He comes back from a short stint in the NFL with the Los Angeles Rams, where he participated in the Super Bowl. But the last time he was at Kentucky, Darren, the Wildcats averaged 32.3 points a game,
Hmm.
425.5 total yards offense, including right under 200 yards rushing a game. Do you anticipate seeing those numbers again this year?
I really do. And as crazy as some of these things sound to say about Kentucky, because it's just not typically I mean, the conversation you have. I mean, think about it. They're getting Devin Leary, who, if the 2021 Devin Leary, the pre last year's injury, Devin Leary shows up, uh, he can light a lot of SEC opponents, absolutely light them up. Then you've got one of the best O lines in the country, and one of the big things that was a struggle last year, or one of the top O lines in the conference. I wouldn't say in the country necessarily. One of the biggest struggles that took place with the offensive line last year is they went to a new blocking scheme under the new offensive coordinator. And one of the first things Liam Cohen did was bring back the zone blocking scheme that all of these guys were accustomed to and had learned. So there was, in the spring game and in fall practice, there's been immediate returns on that. People can see a dramatic difference. So you've got an improved offensive line. You've got Liam Cohen back, Devin Leary coming in. They pick up 1,000-yard rusher in Ray Davis from Vanderbilt, who has proven you open up a hole. He's not a home run guy. He's not going to all of a sudden break off an 80-yard run, but you open up a hole that looks like he should get 3 runs or 3 yards, and he could get 7 to 8. And then you have on top of that a wide receiver room that a lot of the services like Phil Steele and Pick Six Previews have. This wide receiver room is one of the top 25 wide receiver rooms in the country. That's incredible for a Kentucky offense. I think there is the real potential for us to see some incredible numbers out of this offense this year.
I think you're right, Darren. What did Devin Leary do at North Carolina State? He threw for 62 touchdowns to what,
Right.
six interceptions.
Exactly.
That's a pretty good ratio. You
That's
mentioned
nice.
the experience in the wide receiver room.
Yep.
1,000-yard rusher in the backfield. I think Kentucky may surprise a lot of people this year. Now, on the other side of the field is the defense. Brad White is back for his 5th year as defensive coordinator. He's been there 6 years, coached outside linebackers before
Hmm.
getting the DC role. But last year's Kentucky defense only gave up 19 points a game.
Yeah.
So pretty stout defense. Starts with on the defensive line with Deion Walker, a freshman All-American, and then some strong linebackers that are coming back, as well as some transfers. You've got J.J. Weaver coming back, Devarian Rayner transferring in from Northern Illinois. If he does at Kentucky what he did at Northern Illinois, that's going to be a huge pickup.
Yep.
Uh, Now, they did lose some players in the secondary. That could be one of their issues, but they've got a really great safety, in addition to a transfer coming in from Cincinnati as well that will help shore up the secondary. So let's look at their schedule and see their path to a possible New Year's Day or bowl championship bid.
Yep.
Of course, they've had Ball State, Eastern Kentucky, Akron. Then you go to at Vanderbilt. All right. So that could be an early test. Florida, they get Florida at home. Now, this is pretty murderous. After the Florida game, which is always a high intensity game, they go to Georgia.
That's
Ouch.
tough. Yeah,
That's
very tough. Yeah.
They got Missouri at home before an open date. They've got Tennessee at home. They go to Mississippi State. They've got Alabama at home. Look at this. They've got Florida at home, Tennessee at home, Alabama at home. I'm sure the place is going to be rocking. I don't know if it's going to help them that much in those games, but who knows?
But you know what? You look at Florida, Missouri, Tennessee, Alabama, those games being at home, it sets up to you would kind of expect them to win the Missouri game. And then, I think it makes a Florida game a much more attainable game. We've talked before in our preview that we're very concerned about the kind of year Florida could have. So that sets up. And I know this sounds crazy, but there are so many uncertainties with Alabama in the quarterback room. If their season had started to go off the rails because the quarterback is an uncertain thing and their offense is just not working the way they want to, that could be a fun game to watch, depending on what Alabama's season looks like and what Kentucky's season looks like going into that game. Now, it's very possible that Alabama's bordering on undefeated, maybe just one loss, and goes to Kentucky and beats them by 4 scores. Who knows? Who knows? But I think it's at least an interesting game to watch. And I'm telling you, the Kentucky-Tennessee game, specifically in Lexington, is always a challenge for Tennessee. Now, they win it 99% of the time. I think it's been in the last 10 years, maybe Kentucky did win that game for the first time in 26 seasons or so, something like that. It was an incredibly long streak, but it's always, more times than not, it's a fun game to watch and not a blowout. And Kentucky gives Tennessee everything they're looking for. So I think coming off of a bye, that's an interesting game. But man, that at Mississippi State, Alabama, out South Carolina run, if I'm Louisville, I am so excited that that's the run coming into play us at the end of the year, because I think that's going to be rough. That's a rough stretch.
It is going to be rough. We'll see what the Wildcats do. They might surprise a few people this year.